Welcome to our first video on non-chord tones. We will be discussing passing tones in this video. So, our objectives are to review skip and step motion, to introduce strong and weak beats, or review it for some of you, to define what passing tones are, to create passing tones in part writing examples, and then to demonstrate passing tones in a musical example of a song you might have already heard. So first, let's look at step and skip motion. This example on the left, we have two examples of step motion going up and down. In the left measure, we have an E going to an F in the treble clef. That is a step going up because the notes are consecutive. They're right next to each other. And then in the second example, the measure on the right, we have stepwise motion going down, E to D. A skip, conversely, is when the notes are anything but a step next to each other. So in the example on the left here, we have an E skipping up to a G. We skip the F. On the example on the right here in blue, we have an A skipping down to a D. So we're skipping the G, F, and E. That's a skip up and a skip down. So let's also look at strong and weak beats. And we have three separate instances here. In instance A, you're going to notice we're dealing with quarter notes. So the strong beats are beats 1 and 3 in this example. And then the weak beats are beats 2 and 4. Those are circled, they're the weak beats. When we're dealing with eighth notes, however, it changes. The downbeat of 1, 2, 3, and 4 are strong, and the circled upbeats, the ands, are weak. And then when we deal with 16th notes, keeping the pattern, the 1 is strong, the E is weak, the and is strong, and the E is weak. And then here we continue on to eighth notes where the 2 is strong and the and is weak. So that's how strong and weak beats work. It all depends on what your rhythmic value is. Now, let's define passing tones. It's obviously a non-chord tone, a note that's not in the chord that you're dealing with. So what is a passing tone? It is an NCT, a non-chord tone, approached by a step that continues in the same direction by a step. What does that mean? Let's look at this example here. We are in the key of C. We have a 1 chord, C, C, E, and G. And it stays on C, G, C, and E here. So we have 2 1 chords. Every note in this example is in the chord except this F. F is not in the 1 chord in the key of C. Now notice that F is approached. In other words, it comes from a step, and then it continues in a step in the same direction. So let's look at it. Our 1 chord is C, E, and G. Here's a C, here's an E, here's a G. We have the F, that is a non-chord tone. What makes it a passing tone is that it's approached, it comes from the G, going down by step. Therefore, to be a passing tone, it must continue down by step as it does here. And that's what a passing tone is. Now, let's look at a few examples where I'm going to write in passing tones to a few simple examples. In example 1 here, we have this example without passing tones and this with. Notice 5-1 is my progression in the key of C. G to C, we have G, B, D, doubling the G, and we have C, C, G, and E, so C, E, G, doubling our Cs. That's our proper voice leading. We have the 1 common tone because our bass moves by 4th in root position. So now, in order to create a passing tone, I need a space to put it. We couldn't really put a passing tone from G to G because there's no note in between it. We could put a note in between D and E, but it would be a D sharp and it might be a little too chromatic sounding. And here, there is no note between B and C on the piano, so we couldn't put a passing tone there. But in the bass, I go from G to C. I have plenty of space to put passing tones in. So that's exactly what I did. If you look at this, I have G, which is the 5 part of the 5 chord, then a passing tone A. We could look at this B as a 5-6 chord actually, or a passing tone. I would accept either. And then we land on the 1. Let's listen to what this example sounds like. Now with the passing tones. And that's what that example sounds like. Now, Let's move to a second example doing the same thing. Same voice leading, same exact example that we had last time. Now you might ask how you add a passing tone in one of the other voices. Well, it would be simple. If you look into soprano here, what I did was I made the D skip to a G, and since we're in the 5 chord, this G is still a chord tone because it's GBD is the 5 chord. So I went from chord tone to chord tone, and then I put the passing tone in between there. So here's my passing tone, my F, which is not in the G chord. Let's listen to that. So here, I'm still in the key of C. I went from 4 to 5. Notice I'm moving, the bass is moving up by step, therefore everybody goes in contrary motions because there are no common tones. So we have F, 2 Fs, an A, and a C in our 4 chord, and we have G, B, D in our 5 chord. So where can we put the passing tone? We could pass from A to G by putting an A flat in between, but again, it's chromatic and we don't want to deal with that yet. There is no space to put a passing tone between C and B here because there's no note between them. But if you look here between the F and the D, there's a perfect opportunity to put a note in between, which is what I did. Let's listen to it. And there's my passing tone there. Now finally, let's look at a real musical example. This is an example of Handel's Alleluia chorus from his piece, The Messiah. It is in the key of D major, so the 1 chord is D, F sharp, A. We have 2 sharps. The 4 chord, D, E, F, G, is G, B, D. Okay, those are the 2 chords we'll be dealing with here. If you look at the very first note, we notice we have a D in the bass, F sharp, A, and D, with this D carrying through. So that is our 1 chord. Our next pitch in the bass is an E, which makes me think it might be a 2 chord, and I actually also have a G. E, G, B would be my 2 chord. I'm missing my B, but I have this D carrying over in the soprano. So that really makes me think it's not a 2 chord, so I have to kind of wait a minute to see what's going on there. When I look at the next note, I have an F sharp in the bass, which could make it a 3 chord, and then I have an A here, and then the D carrying over, so I have D, F sharp, A. That makes it the 1 chord. But with an F sharp in the bass, it's not a 1 in root position, it's a 1-6 because it's in first inversion. Let's look at the next chord. D in the bass, D, F sharp, A on top of it, we're back to the 1 chord. The next chord, G in the bass, I have G, B, D. G, B, D is the 4 chord, so there's my 4 chord. And then on the and a 3, D, F sharp, A again makes my 1 chord. Then with the bass going F sharp and A, I have a 1-6 and a 1-6-4. So that's what's going on there. Let's give it a listen. Let's listen to it again. There's your bass. And one last time. So really all Handel is doing is playing 1, 4, 1 in this rhythm. 1, 1, 4, 1. And he just kind of put some non-chord tones there to embellish it. So there you have passing tones for you. I hope this was helpful. And thanks for watching.